Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another segment of our Saturday Anything Goes card crafting. And today I thought we would kind of go a little bit back to the basics of card making. We've done some really great 3D projects, but I wanted to go ahead and focus more on a card today. Hi there, Patricia. Thank you for joining us. And I have the card out in front. Since we're nearing the close of Celebration, I wanted at least one more opportunity to showcase the Springtime Foils designer series paper. And also the Petal Palette stamp set, which is in the Occasions catalog. That will go through until the end of May. So plenty of time still to grab that stamp set. And I stuck with, since there's a lot of silver going on, I wanted a strong color for the flowers and the ribbon. Otherwise, I felt like they would just kind of get lost amongst all of the silver in the stripe. This is the first time I've used the striped sheet of the designer series paper. And I really do like the way that this came out. Hi, Anne. Thank you. All right, so it's really easy to put together, pretty fast. I'm down here in Texas visiting my brother, so wanted something that I could transport easily without having to carry a lot of stuff with me. So I pre-cut both my card base and the designer series paper and the label. But as I go through it, I will be sure and let you know what each piece is. I'm going to take this one out of the way, and I'm going to bring in my little goodie bag here that has all of the pieces in it. Hi, Chris. Thank you for joining. Hi, Andy. Andy's my hubby. He's so sweet. He joined me today. He's back in Georgia. All right, so this is an A2 card, Patricia, to answer your question, and I'll start with that. I have a sheet of Whisper White that is cut to 4 1/4 by 11, scored and folded at 5 1/2, and that's going to be our card base. We're going to be working with our design panel throughout most of this, though, so I'm going to go ahead and set that aside as well, and let's talk about how we're going to put this together. So my design panel is the same as the card, the front of the card, so it'll be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I have 2 pieces of designer series paper, the Springtime Foils, the striped one, which we'll glue that down to the top, and then the really pretty leaf pattern one, which we'll go ahead and attach to the bottom. And I really like the way that we can mix our silver and gold together in this, and the gold just adds that perfect little additional touch of elegance to it. As far as the measurements, you can pretty much make them anything you want. I've seen them done with equal sizes of the different DSPs. I kind of like to work to where I have uneven pieces. So my leaf pattern, I believe, is, I know it's 4 1/4 across, and I believe that it is 2 1/4 inches top to bottom. And then that leaves my striped panel, which again, 4 1/4 across, and then that would make it 3 1/4 segment from top to bottom. And just like that is pretty, but I really don't like that line of demarcation. So I went ahead and cut some ribbon to go with it. And this is part of our Berry Burst metallic edged ribbon. The silver goes along with the silver stripe paper. And rather than do this in 2 pieces, I kind of did a cool thing. On the card that I showed you, I did do 2 pieces. I did one long length that I wrapped around the design panel, and then I tied a bow and attached it. But for this one, because I have my ribbon on a spool that's not really close to my desk, and I have a little bow maker that I use. I just took the bow maker over, tied my bow, and made sure the tails were long enough that I could then wrap them around the card. So that's how I did that. And then we also have a sentiment, "You are loved," and I stamped this with Memento Tuxedo Black ink on a scrap of Whisper White, and then I also cut a scrap of the silver foil paper we have and mounted it on that so that it would just help it stand away from the card. And we're going to pop that up on dimensionals as well. And then the last piece we're going to be working with, I love the lots of labels framelits. And so I used, I believe it's the third one from the smallest, to cut this out ahead of time. This is what we're going to go ahead and stamp on. And we'll also be using our stamping blends to color in. So that's how we're going to put everything together. And we might as well start by adhering our designer series paper down to our design panel. So I'm going to use for that my multi-purpose liquid glue from Tombow. I'll just give it a goodly amount without too much. I don't want it squishing out, because then the front of your card can be a little bit tacky when you go ahead and pick it up. And for me, the easiest way to do this is to stand my design panel up, and that way I can stand the DSP up as well and make sure it's flush with the bottom and also with the sides. We're going to do the exact same thing for our piece of the silver stripe of the designer series paper. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a goodly amount of glue on there, and I'm going to turn the card around so I can do the same method of standing it up and then making sure that it's flush. And if you end up having a little bit of a gap between the two, sometimes I don't always cut my paper very straight, no worries. That's what our ribbon is there for. Our ribbon is going to cover up that line. And to attach my ribbon, I'm going to use glue dots. You can use liquid glue, but I find it leaves a little bit of an impression on the back of it. So I'm using our mini glue dots, and I'm just going to take and adhere one glue dot to either tail. And then I'm also going to put one behind the bow. And I'll show you why that's important in a minute. By putting one behind the bow, before I try and tack the ends in, I can make sure that I get this lined up where I want it. And since our floral panel is going to be over on the left, I need to make sure I come far enough over on the right to where it won't interfere. And then I'm going to press it down. Now it makes it easy for me to pick it up, flip it over, and adhere it down. Let me make sure I've got my edges there. Probably need to put one more glue dot on there. Just to be on the safe side. So I'll go ahead, stick that on there. All right, you don't want to stick, I'll just stick it on the back of the paper. Either way works. Once I have that on there, I can wrap it around. Well, good grief, that just doesn't want to stick. And then I can go ahead and finish it up by bringing this one all the way around. I think that's what it is. I used the, didn't have the longest side on there. Let me see if I can just pry this up a little. That's the nice thing about glue dots. If you're very, very careful on this designer series paper, because it's a little bit slick, you can pull it up without too much trouble at all. It's always easier to adhere your glue dots when you do it that way too. So I'll put a couple more on here just to be on the safe side, since I did short myself a little bit, but it will all work out just fine. And then I'm going to make sure I have that as straight as I can get it. There we go. Much better. All right. Now I can take and put my glue dots away, because that's the only thing that I used my glue dots for, I think. And this, we're going to go ahead and glue down to our card front. And we can go ahead and take care of that now because the rest of it is just working with the design panel. For this, I again used my multi-purpose glue. I'm also going to put it over the ribbon to make sure that it doesn't somehow pop up and the edges fray and those little bits stick out, kind of like my hair when I put it back in a ponytail. And again, this is the same size, so I can put it down, stand it up, and the nice thing about the Tombow is I've got that little bit of wiggle room before it dries to make sure it goes on there well. Now we can go ahead and set this aside while we work on our floral panel. I'm going to bring in my piercing mat to give me a little bit more cushion since I'm working on a very hard surface, and it will also make it easier for you to see what I'm doing. So I've already mounted the floral stamp that you see here from the Petal Palette stamp set. It's the one right up there. And we're going to ink it up in Tuxedo Black. Any kind of a black ink that is safe to use with watercolor markers that we have works, or you could even use our basic gray would work. I just love that since I'm using the bold colors of blends, I like using the black as well. And because this is a pretty big stamp, to make sure I get good coverage, I'm going to bring the stamp pad over here to the stamp itself so that I can make sure I get every bit of the impression inked. Just like that. And now I want to make sure that I have it facing the way that I want it. So let me just pull this down here, and I'm going to go ahead. And you may go off of the label, and that's just fine. Doesn't really matter. And then you put your stamp down on there, on the lots of labels that we cut out, and then just hold pressure on it for a couple of seconds. You don't have to press hard, but you want to make sure that you get a good impression. And there we have it. Now you can either have it this way, you can have it this way, however you want to orient your flowers. I can put my ink away because now comes the fun part, and that's coloring. And I've used our Stamping Blends alcohol markers, and the two colors I used were the Old Olive Light and the Old Olive Dark for the leaves, and then Cherry Cobbler Light and Cherry Cobbler Dark for the flowers. And I know that the Cherry Cobbler is a bit more red than the Berry Burst Ribbon, but since they fall into the same color family, I think they'll go together well. And coloring it is so simple. There are two brush points on here. You've got your regular brush point on one end, and then you've got your nib, which allows for fine detail. This is a pretty big image. I'm going to use my brush point. And all you're going to do is go in and lay down some color. Don't have to be too fussy about it. Just go in, scrub in a little color. Almost done with our leaves. So I start out with the Old Olive Light, and because leaves tend to have darker green where the veining of the leaf is, then I bring in my dark Old Olive, and the stamp is really nice because it's already got those veins in for you. So I'm going to concentrate a little more at the bottom of each leaf and then come up and just follow the veins. Just like that. So as you can see, it takes practically no time at all to color things in and even do some shading using your Stampin' Blends. And I missed a little bit of a leaf right there, so I'll come back in and just give it a little bit of a highlight. All right, so that's it for the leaves. Now let's move on to the flowers. Again, I'm going to work with the lighter color of the combo. So this is the Cherry Cobbler Light, and I'm using that brush tip, which allows me to lay on a lot of, or color over a larger area. And you're just going to scrub that in. And if there's a little bit of white showing, that doesn't really bother me. I kind of like it. But I also try not to go too close on my first coat with this on the flowers, because when I add my second coat and then go back and blend them, it's going to push that ink out towards the edge. And because I'm working with smaller areas on my petals, I went ahead and switched over to my brush point. And here I'm just going to lay in some natural color shadows. So where the leaves overlap, and maybe at the very edge, I can drop some in, like here, the very edge tends to have a little more color. But you don't have to be a colorist to go in and do this. Just drop in color wherever you want it to be a little bit darker. And then I'm going to come back with my light color, and I'm going to use the brush again. I'm sorry, not the brush, the nib point again, because I don't want to completely cover up the light I've already colored. I just want to blend in where I added the dark to kind of give it a gradient. And then if it hasn't pushed the ink all the way to the edge and I want to cover in some more white, I can certainly do that here. So we've got our bigger one done. Now we'll move over to this one. And again, I'm just going to switch to my brush end so I can lay down a lot of color. The important thing about using the blends, if you're going to use two different colors of the same set so that you can add shadows, is you want to lay down some good amount of your base color, which gives you time then to bring in your darker color and makes it easier to blend. And I'm going to actually turn this so I can see what I'm doing here and just add in my shadows. Between the petals, where they overlap each other, is where you would have naturally some darker color. And now I'll just come back in and blend those out with the lighter color. And that helps soften the edges between, but still make sure that it maintains the balance between your lighter color and your darker color. All right, we're on the last one. I'll just lay that color in. And if you do go a little bit outside the edges, don't worry too much about it. It gives it more of a watercolor feel. Again, I'm going to turn this one around so that I can see, put my darkest colors in the center. And my rose bush at home, because the edges of the petal curl over, they actually have a little bit of a shadow on the very tips of the petals. So I'm going to do that, as well as then go in and wherever I have petals that are overlapping, like down here, I would go ahead and add in some shading there. And then come back and just smooth that out. And there you have it. That is all there is to coloring in your flowers. Now, if you want to get really adventurous, what you can do, if I bring in my card and I'm just going to put this right here just to see what it looks like, and I say, you know, that white is really, really stark white. If that's something that you're not comfortable with, I like it both ways, but I'm going to show you how to do what's called the splatter technique. And that will give you a little bit of color on the white portion to help soften that white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back in my light cherry cobbler. I'm going to go to my brush end and move everything out of the way because it can splatter a little bit further than you think. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and place the tip of the marker inside the cap, just the tip, not all the way in, just the tip about halfway. And I'm going to come up quite a ways here. And I'm just going to flick pressure. And what that does is create these little spatters. I don't know if you can see them very well there, but it goes ahead and puts just sprinkles of the color on the white itself. And some of it goes on the leaves. That doesn't bother me either. It just makes it look more natural. Okay, set this aside for just a second and get my piercing mat out of the way. Again, I just used that to give me a little bit of extra cushion while I was stamping to make sure I got a good impression. Now we're ready to go ahead and finish assembly of our card. I went ahead and popped up both the sentiment, which is right here, and I'm going to put that down towards the bottom on that end, and then I'm going to prop this up as well and put it right here. So I'll bring in my trusty dimensionals. I love these things. Every time I place an order, I order some because I never want to run out. And then I'm going to come over here and just add one on either side of the sentiment panel. And then I'm going to, because I have the ribbon in the middle, when I put my dimensionals on the back of this, I don't want to put it in the very center. I don't want it to trap that ribbon. I like a little bit of movement there. So I'm going to concentrate my dimensionals at the top and at the bottom. And then I'm going to put two on either side towards the top. And that should be just plenty to secure it onto our design panel. And as you can see, I left the center open, so we're not going to have to worry about the ribbon being trapped. If you ever have a problem peeling the backings off these, which I sometimes do, just give them a press with your thumbnail. And then that makes it much easier to peel the backing away. And then try and corral them. Otherwise, when you take those backings off, they can get everywhere. And then I'm just going to decide where I want it. I'm going to tuck it slightly underneath. Now, the really nice thing about this striped paper is I can use the stripes to help me line it up. And then decide how high up you want or how low. Because I have that sentiment going in the bottom right, I'm going to bring it up a bit. And just, I haven't pressed it down yet. I just lightly laid it down. If I see I like it, then I can go ahead and press down where I have the dimensionals. We'll do the same thing with our sentiment. I'm just going to take these off. And then decide where on here I want it. I think right about there looks good. I just laid it down. I didn't press because I like to pick it up and ensure that it's straight. All right, easy breezy for that part. The card looks really nice, but you always want that little extra touch, that little finishing touch. And I decided that using some of our pearl basic jewels would look really good with this. But the white wasn't going to show up very well. So what I did was I took one of the gray stamping blends out of the duo, and I colored a large, a medium, and a small. So this one, and that one. Colored them with the marker, and it adds just enough gray that it should now stand out from the card. So I'm just going to use my scissors here. I forgot my pokey tool. Pick up a pearl, and I had 3 of them going across the top, so I put the large one down first. Again, I'm not pressing hard yet. I want to make sure I get these placed where I want them. And then I've got a medium-sized one, and I'm just kind of doing them in a line across the top right part of the card. One more right about there. I think that looks good, so I'm going to press them down, and we are done with our card. So as you can see, it went together really quickly. It helps conserve on your supplies, because if you have scraps of your designer series paper that are big enough, you can use those. And then also, if you have a scrap of ribbon that's long enough to wind around your design panel, you can use that. So a great way to go into your scrap stash and help to use those up as well. All right, so that's the card that I wanted to show you. Does anyone have any questions? Hi, Viv. Hi, Anne. Now, if you need to order any supplies to make the card, I would be more than happy to help you with that. I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up, and these are all Stampin' Up products. You can order them from me by visiting my blog. I'm going to go ahead and write down the blog name here so you can see it. It's Cards by Winnie, spelled with a Y, .wordpress.com. Guess I could bring that up so you could see it a bit, huh? All right, so Cards by Winnie .wordpress, not res, PRESS.com. I will also post my video on my blog after I get it uploaded to YouTube. And if you're visiting my Facebook page, you can always come back here to view the video as well. Oh, Patricia, you live in Covington. How fun. We should get together sometime. Let's see. Patricia Owens, where did I get the "You Are Loved" sentiment? Ooh, I'll bet I didn't bring it with me either. Let me check on that and get back to you. I'm pretty sure it's out of one of the Occasions catalog stamps sets. So I'll go ahead and research that, and I'll drop a comment and it'll ping you so that you'll know where that one came from. All right, well, we kept this video under 30 minutes, so that makes me very happy. I hope that you all feel the quality of this one is better than the past ones have been. My sweet darling husband bought me a high-def webcam to use to shoot my videos, and so far I'm very pleased with the quality of it. Okay, everyone, thank you so much again for joining. Visit me on my blog or on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like and subscribe to see future videos there. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. And we'll see you next Saturday at the same time. Bye-bye now.